Hello, everyone. This is Father Michael Tischel.
And I am pretty sure I am Strati Papa Georgiou.
Well, we'll find out during this episode. And we are... What are we again?
It's an imperfect
podcast.
Cue music.
Strati, Christ is risen.
Truly, he is risen, Father.
He is, truly, indeed. This is so nice to be together. We are resuming our regularly scheduled series after Pascha, where we had a nice little Paschal episode. And here we are, talking about you. Isn't that nice?
That sounded so weird.
Isn't that nice?
Right. It's okay.
And yeah, good. You better enjoy it.
I do, actually. I like talking about myself.
Hey,
I'm not self-conceited or anything.
No. It's good. It's good. It's healthy. So we talked a little bit about your past, your history, your personal and family history, and your connection with Cyprus and with the States, and that whole journey of being born here, but then spending 8 years of your life in Cyprus and then coming back here. Then we delved in a little bit to your present, getting into some of what you're up to these days. And we're sort of still in that a little bit, and then we're also kind of heading a little bit towards what are your future prophecies, hopes and dreams. It's hard to talk about the future, obviously, but yeah, hopes and dreams. I'm gonna start off the interrogation, so you better be ready. We've got the low lit interrogation room all set up here, and I'm smoking a cigarette. No, I'm just kidding.
Cigar.
Like the detective, yeah. So what are some of the gaps, if any, that you'd like to fill in as far as your present reality, your present existence? What is your existence like now as Strati?
I guess it's pretty, similar to everybody else with this whole COVID thing. I basically, all I do is I work on these videos and, do this podcast and, I'm not going places, to have interesting things happen.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. So I think we could probably just end the podcast.
Right. Thank you all for listening, and
it's been. Oh.
I'm the kind of, I feel like if there's one thing I can call myself or describe myself in some ways, is that I am very much interested in this is a hard thing to explain, so bear with me, everyone. Well, basically, I really do enjoy the authentic in life, and the authentic or the ancient, or the I'm one of those people. I love traditional music of different kinds. And the reason for that is, to me, especially not just folk music, but especially folk music, especially of the Greek. Obviously, that's generally the area of interest of mine. But not just is almost like the salt of the earth. When you hear traditional music, you're hearing something very old, a lot of the time anyway. I don't know how much that goes in the West, as music was reformed a lot. With the classical or with the style of music that it has become prominent in the West, but especially in the modal musics of the East, music is very ancient in its origins, and that's one thing that I enjoy quite a bit. I enjoy history quite a bit. I've said that but I also enjoy art, like especially Byzantine iconography. And while I'm not like an iconographer, and I'm not a chanter, and I'm not I do play a Greek instrument, a traditional instrument, but I'm definitely not a professional. I delve into all these things, and intellectually discuss all those things and try to find the most authentic kind of way, the most authentically, I don't know how to explain it. Perhaps you can help me fill in some of these blanks here with the, I'm always searching for the authentic.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by the authentic?
Not the thing that everybody just kind of accepts as the way of the world.
Herd mentality. Herd mentality. Mass minds.
I do that a lot with a lot of things.
So yeah.
To varying extreme degrees.
Right. Right. Something transcendent.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely look for that. What do you mean by transcendent?
Yeah,
exactly?
well, I mean, I guess trying to think of like when like I'm just kind of digging into these ideas that maybe sometimes we just take for granted as far as like authenticity or.
Well, yeah. I guess I also mean like the tradition. I'm very much into like this tradition is very ancient. Sign me up, except for unless it's like something crazy, right. Obviously, like Chinese foot binding.
Sure,
or,
right. There's some ancient traditions that are better left in the past.
Yeah. Say what you want about Mao's government, but he got rid of foot binding.
There we go. There's one virtue there.
One virtue at least.
Yeah.
But I'm very much into that sort of like if I see like a tradition, and they can trace it back 2,000 to 3,000 to more years, I'm like that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So there's something about that sense of the enduring quality of something. Yeah. Right. Is that kind of what you're getting at? It's
yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what you would call it. Yeah, the enduring quality.
Yeah. That it's not just kind of fickle.
Yeah,
and kind of like
this decade we like this music, and this decade we like this music, and then this, not even decade anymore. Every month is different.
So it's kind of like there's a depth there. There's kind of like a desire to go beyond the superficial, beyond the surface level.
Right.
And yeah.
And I definitely, when I was, a lot younger, I'm not a lot younger, okay, I'm not that old. But when I was like in my teens, let's say, like I was definitely a little bit more, as a teenager can be extreme about it. And as you get a little older, you get more numb.
Sure.
Not numb. You do get numb.
It's true. Jaded.
But you're jaded. But definitely a lot less, yeah, you mature, I guess is what I'm getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a maturing. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's something interesting to that and the I would say the quality of depth in relation to time is interesting. You talk about tradition, you talk about things that are ancient. What is it about something that's ancient that attracts us, that draws you towards it? There's I don't know. I mean, is it the fact that it has lasted so long? Does it remind you of eternity? What is it exactly that?
That's a good point.
That.
I think that for me, I think I kind of said this before, but for me, it's like, so even I guess I could say this, even Christianity, which one might say was new at one point, was really ancient, even when it was new. Because it wasn't formed on nothing. Or even on the precepts of something. But it was a literal continuity of something that was very much older. And if you dig into it, it itself, it's not just on the outside level, just a Jewish sect or a Jewish continuation. But really it is what the Jewish religion meant to be by God. So I mean, I think maybe that is where I begin my life's sort of search for this kind of meaning in things, and so like, you know, so then I question. I question everything to a degree. You know, okay, everybody says said political system is evil. All right, let me look into this political system to see if it's evil. You know, I don't just accept just because somebody said this is evil that you know, that I'm just going to take it for granted now for evil because I learned that in school. I do that. I still do that to this day. You know, as I I listen to, you know, like traditional music that you probably in that music was probably the same music there for thousands of years, and to me, that the fact that it's been there for so long is I'm sure there's better words, magical to some extent.
No, magical. I hear you. I hear you. Well, I mean, as you're talking, one of the interesting dynamics here is, you know, there's it's very subtle because when we're talking about old things, right, and aging, you know, I think there is a sense of aging, like when people age, when you and I age, you know, oftentimes we feel this sense of kind of deterioration, the loss of youthfulness and of you know, and aging becomes this kind of, you know, the life is kind of sucked out of you, right? Yeah. And so on the one hand, there's an attraction to things that are old. On the other hand, there's a repulsion to things that are old. Like, I think from the human experience, from the human point of view, right? Like, you know, we want to, you know, death, right? I mean, you know, aging is a sign of death. And so nobody wants to die on that kind of face level, right? So I guess all that I'm saying is that I find it fascinating that you and we as humans in general can have, there are these kind of two responses to things that are old, to ancient things. There's the one that's very kind of, that attracts us, that draws us, that kind of enlivens us and kind of makes us feel this yearning. And then there's this kind of like, oh gosh, like, you know, we're getting old, you know, like, and things that are old are withered and they've decayed. But what you're saying, what I hear you saying, have you ever heard of thin places? Thin places? It's kind of a thing. I stumbled across, I think it was like a New York Times article where like, basically like, you know, like the, I think you guys went there, but what's the place, the place in Ireland with the big, hedge, in
England?
Stonehenge, thank you. Yeah.
Stonehenge.
Is that Ireland?
Henge. No, it's in England.
It's in England, thank you. But some people talk about that as being a thin place in the sense of like...
Yeah, like other dimension thing?
Right. So like there are places...
I have heard of that.
Yeah, there are places on Earth that are kind of like these portals into...
Right, yes.
You know, sort of another dimension. And
this is an interesting...
What's that?
This is interesting, go on.
Well, so I kind of see your attraction to these ancient things as almost like a desire for thin experiences.
Interesting.
But these thin experiences are sort of like enduring in the sense, like a thin experience is like it's a manifestation of some, as you called it, something magical. We could call it something transcendent.
Sure. Something
enchanted. These are all kind of words we throw around, right?
Yeah, I you know, and this goes all the way back. I wanted to be your son wants to be a diver.
Uh-huh.
I think Father Vaniotti's son wanted to be an archaeologist for the longest time.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I was really into archaeology, especially dinosaurs, you know.
Uh-huh.
You know, big scary dinosaurs is a great thing for a 4-year-old.
Sure.
But yeah.
But yeah, you want to experience, I mean, there's a kind of a desire to, I think it's kind of a desire to transcend time and space. You know, I mean, that's what transcendence is, right? Transcendence is we talk about something transcendent. It's something that allows us to transcend blank. And the blank is, time and space, essentially. It's the limitations of our finite mortal existence.
I think you've nailed it on the head. I mean,
I figured you out?
I think you figured that part out anyway. Because that's definitely I definitely do get this, when we talk about ancient cultures, not in a textbook, but yes, in a textbook, but if I see things, it definitely get that definite sense of what you just said.
Right. It's mystical.
Mystical and mysterious.
Mysterious, yeah. Mysterious and mystical.
And we love the unknown.
Right.
So I'm definitely that way. Of course, if I went back to ancient Sumeria, I'd probably stand around going,
okay,
this kind of smells here. Something,
right.
Regardless of that, there's definitely something,
Yeah, and it's a good question. I mean, I kind of have this debate in my head about is this just a form of escapism? And I'm not just talking about you. I mean, I'm attracted to it like this as well. I mean,
yeah.
But is this a form of escapism from our current predicament? Are we overly romanticizing the past?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be looking more towards the future?
Yeah. Well,
are we kind of allowing this to kind of pull us back away from the present and the future? Is this kind of overvaluing the past and not valuing the present and the future enough?
Well, yeah.
I'm hammering.
No. I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can kind of, yeah, I'm sure there is a form of, on a level, if we're not careful, you can definitely romanticize things that you never experienced. But I think if one is truly serious about this kind of thing, they can definitely see all the drawbacks of living at a less technology isn't so much my interest. It's rather the medical side of things that were definitely a lot less. But I think it's also a response to what we're seeing happening, and what we see as to happen, as we're seeing that is about to happen.
Right.
And I think we see that, and we think about like what we're doing to the environment, for instance.
Sure.
People act like it was all of humanity that ruined the environment, but
right.
really it's been the past 200 years that we really started to ruin the environment and to make animals go extinct and things like that. Really, if you just go back a little bit, there was. No, there really wasn't any. I mean, there really wasn't any. I'm not saying that every society was like maybe the Native Americans that lived in nature in a
harmonious.
Kind of worshipped nature to some extent.
Yeah,
pantheistic. Although I guess if you keep going farther and farther back in Western history, you kind of find that animistic culture as well. But even in the 1600s, I mean, you think. We talk about the loss of forests. I mean, they were that wasn't an issue then. I mean, there was plenty of nature to go around.
Yep.
And just from this one perspective, I guess is what there is something to be said about the past.
Yep.
That definitely is being corrupted now. Just this one element, and I'm sure there's plenty that we can talk about. That will lead us to understand why some of us feel this way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely drawn to that. Well,
I'll tell you what though. When you go to Cyprus, right, and you're like me, and you're and then you go to a random. You don't have to go to a museum. You don't have to go to an archaeological site. You just go to a chapel that's 1,000 years old, and you just kind of realize, oh, here it is. This thing has been standing here for 1,000 years, and it's just here. You see this art on the walls? It's also 1,000 years old, and it's just here. It's not. Yeah. I mean, granted, a church is mystical, and the art on it has mystical properties, but it's just there. it's not
Right.
it's not
It is
hovering.
there.
It's
It
not
is.
it's not
Right.
in a cloud.
There's a concreteness to it. There's a historicity to it, right? It's actually concretely, historically. I mean, it's present, but it's not something abstract, right? But I also think about that. I mean, you said when you walk in, you realize that this has been here, right? I wonder, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, I've had similar experiences walking into ancient churches, and I haven't really necessarily been conscious of this with all of them, but with some, I think with some instances, there is a feeling that's pre-realization, a pre-realization feeling, precognitive, pre-rational. So you realize that you're like, whoa, and I hear a lot of people saying that, like when they go to Greece or something, they say like, I went into that church and I was just like, wow, this has been here, but I wonder if maybe we're not jumping past another experience by saying that, because we're focusing on more of the rational side of things. And before that, there's this kind of, I don't know what it is. I mean, there's this, because there is, I mean,
like not to,
with
well, I don't exactly know what you're saying, but
this perception to realize something, in my mind, there's a little bit more of an active kind of approach where your mind is actively kind of coming up with this thought based on your experience, right? But to apprehend or to perceive something about this place that's both seen but also not seen, because it's no place is just neutral. I mean, if we believe in God, then we believe that even walking into the middle of the forest, you're walking into the ancient temple of God, right? That he built, and is continuing to build, right? And so that in and of itself, there's something very profound about the builder and the product and the concreteness of that. But walking into an ancient church, not only are you walking into, you're walking into the manifestation, of, people. I mean, there's a connection between the church and people, and both past and present, and their spirits, and I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm getting at the mystical nature of places and buildings, and even if it's not a church, just a place where someone lived. Definitely. How can we can't, if we believe that people have spirits, and that they're not just matter that just decompose.
For sure. If I saw an ancient dwelling or an ancient storehouse, I'd be almost as giddy.
Yeah, right.
Maybe not
right.
as, but
Yeah, well, because there's that feeling.
Yeah, this place was lived in by sentient beings created by God, if you may. That's pretty mystical to me too. I mean, just that, even if they weren't even Christians. Like, let's go back, especially if we start talking about even further, like hundreds of thousands of years, when we start becoming, pre-civilization, if you may. To me, that's fascinating as well. Like, these are our ancient ancestors who were created by God as well. To me, that's as mysterious as well.
Right. There's something about history that's the haunted nature of history. At least for me, that is...
I can relate exactly to what you're saying, but I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. But I know what you're saying, though. That's the thing, is that I know what you're saying, but I...
Right, because it's pre-rational.
Right.
There's a dynamic of grasping it, understanding it, and then when I say feeling, I don't mean just emotion, fleeting emotions. I mean deep in your bones, kind of there's that something, that unknown element, that's kind of there, present, that, it's I think there's something about that thin place dynamic as far as like going to
Well, do you think there are thin places? I mean, I might as well ask it.
Oh,
I don't think that's like a doctrine or a theology of ours. I don't.
Well,
I don't know.
It is in the sense of
Yeah.
No, it is if you think about it from the perspective. I mean, thin places, the wording of it, right? But think about dogma.
Yeah.
Dogma. There's a 4-letter word by many contemporary people's standards, right? It's like let's get rid of the dogma, let's do spirituality. But that is, from my reading and understanding, that's based on a kind of a tragic rupturing that occurred primarily in the West between dogma and spirituality. That they were always united, and that dogma, the articulation, the formulation of who Jesus Christ is, who he is in relation to the other persons of the Trinity, who the Trinity is, all of these things are essentially intellectual buildings that house
deep,
the spirit, right? That house the mystical encounter. They're temples. Dogmas are temples.
Yeah.
Dogmas are temples, right? And within the temple abides the spirit, abides
but what about thin
God.
places?
And that's what I'm saying is that's one level of thin place. That dogmas are a quote unquote place. They're not an actual place, but they're a place you can go in your mind, right? Where you can meet God in a thinner way. They are thinner. Those words and those concepts are thinner than other words and concepts. Get it? So that's a thin place. Another example of a thin place is relics.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. And I would argue the church is a thin place.
Oh, unquestionably.
Yeah.
Unquestionably.
Yeah. I think that's what makes perhaps ancient churches so special is that they're, and I'd even argue like, especially, well, I guess there's no way to put like a scale on what's holier, right, than another thing.
Right.
But like, I imagine Hagia Sophia is a very thin place.
Yeah.
I imagine that cells on Mount Athos,
right?
Those cells hidden from the world are very thin places.
Exactly.
I find the Hall of Mount Athos is kind of a thin place, thin place, not a sin place, a thin.
Yeah.
I think I accidentally said.
Freudian slip. Yeah.
But that's very interesting, and I think this is an interesting kind of almost a segue into the looking in all the wrong places by we can call them modern peoples, especially modern peoples of former Christian lands. And I call them former Christian lands because sorry. Yeah. They're no longer quite that anymore.
Right.
And they look for they look for Stonehenge as their thin place.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And they look for, and they go to all these different, what is it? Roswell, New Mexico for the thing.
Yeah.
But there are places like, people say there are places like these ranches in America where, those are actually thin places where there are UFOs going through them and all kinds of other supernatural things.
Sure.
And people flock to them, give money to research that's done in those places and all kinds of stuff like that. And then instead of, the true thin place, I mean, this is kind of like, without using too many words, just saying the real thin places, which are the temples of God, the temples of our God.
Yep. The living God.
Of the living God.
And that's where, the pre-modern world, and I'm getting a lot of this from my reading of this philosopher Charles Taylor, who I think we've talked a little bit about in the past.
You've either talked about him or mentioned him, or
Yeah. Yeah, he wrote this huge 900-page book called A Secular Age.
It's a lot of pages.
It's a lot of pages. But essentially, he's getting at this whole question of how, within the span of 500 years, from basically the dawn of modernity up until today, how we could have...
Really? 500 years? Actually, that's exactly what I would...
Yeah.
That's as long as I would give it, too, about...
Yeah. Well, he said how people right before that turning point could have not been able to imagine a world where people didn't believe in God, and now
I gotta read this.
It's almost completely flipped. Yeah. Well, there's a great book by James K.A. Smith which is called How Not to Be Secular, and it's essentially an abridged kind of summary of that book. So I would recommend, unless you want to plow through the 900 pages, which you're welcome to do.
Sure.
It's fascinating. I'm getting through it now, but basically he talks about, the enchantment of the pre-modern world and how through modernity, and he does kind of identify Protestantism as a major player in how we've become disenchanted, and he calls it excarnational.
Interesting.
So obviously, playing off of the incarnation and how sort of it's like we've sort of like de-incarnated. We've stripped the flesh off of the word. And
I would even go for a bit further back. I don't know if he does. I would go further back before that. I'd go to when it's our podcast. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
I'd go back to the formation of the Vatican and the rationalism that comes from their sort of theological.
Well, he's probably somewhat hesitant to do that because he's Catholic. So and he might feel like he'd be stepping on some people's toes. I don't know.
No.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think because Protestantism doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes out as a reaction.
Oh, yeah.
It comes out as a reaction.
It's absolutely.
Yeah, it comes as a reaction to the Catholic Church. So
absolutely,
it takes one person to start a problem.
Well, yeah, because the Catholic Church had gone to this extreme in identifying. Where was I just? Oh yeah, this is Hans Boersma. He's an interesting theologian, but in especially like what they call neo-Thomism, and this kind of. This is I guess more of a recent phenomenon. I can't remember if that was I think that was the Counter-Reformation. It was in response to the Reformation. But anyway, with kind of scholars who sort of exalted Thomas Aquinas, they basically conflated symbol and reality. So this is where the whole thing of like transubstantiation is big, because they basically said like the body and blood, I mean the bread and wine becomes so much the body and blood that there's no difference. And then they tried to get into these like really technical, like substance accidents and like how it almost like scientifically becomes, right? So then the Protestants reacted to that and said, right, no, it's a mere symbol, right? And so then like the symbol A and the reality B are super far apart. Whereas for the Catholics, they were so close together. A and B, the symbol and the reality were so close you couldn't tell them apart, right? And then you have, I would say, the Orthodox position, which is that symbol means so much more than just a mere representation of the reality. There's a whole thing you can get into about that, but it's basically the enchantment, you could say, I want to say pneumatizing, like pneumatic, like the word pneuma, spirit, the pneumatizing, the spiritualizing of matter, right, in the transformation. And we don't try to like nail down exactly what's being transformed and all that stuff, right? But there's something that's changed. There's a change that occurs, spiritually speaking, right, with the actual matter. Similarly, I would say probably to the change that occurred in Jesus's resurrected body, right? That he could walk through walls, but he was still flesh and he could still show. So anyway, so all this to say that I was talking about Charles Taylor.
It's going to be a hard one to listen to.
Well, yeah, unless you're interested in it, but
Yeah.
you have to. There's probably like two people other than ourselves that are going to be interested.
Hey, this is
But
an
anyway,
episode about me, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's
If you don't like
it's
it,
like when it's your birthday and you get the.
you can talk. It's your birthday. You can talk about whatever you want to, Strati. This is your podcast. This is our podcast, and this is our podcast about you. So it's
Right.
even, yeah.
It's even
Oh,
more.
man.
It's good.
Oh, Lord have mercy. But why was I was talking about Charles Taylor for
Yeah,
for
and I
specific
completely
purpose.
derailed it.
No, it's okay. That's okay. Oh, yes. Because you were talking about like how, especially in the Western world, we've sort of like, we've taken this whole notion of thin places and like brought it to the level of like aliens and UFOs and
Yeah.
like weird stuff,
Basic-
like haunted houses and.
Basically weird stuff, yes.
But so what I wanted to say is that Taylor talks about how before the kind of dawn of modernity and with the kind of ancient mindset, there was a sense that the world was haunted, was enchanted by the spiritual realm. But, and this is a crucial point, the spiritual realm is not just all good stuff, right? Like they had this sense that it was haunted by spirits, both good and bad, by God, by good and bad spirits, you know, like, and so I think that's actually a really essential point, that if we are going to talk about the enchantment of the world and the spiritual dimension and all that stuff, we have to recognize that there's sort of there's a war. There's like a spiritual, like there are different bodies. There are different, like entities, fallen entities, like there's there's God. Again, like going back to our own tradition, but from this very experiential, mystical perspective, there's God, right? The uncreated creator of all things, the kind of primary, who is so beyond our experience of anything that we can't understand anything about who God is, and yet, out of God's sort of ecstatic love, sort of enters into this relationship with something other than himself to bring it out of non-existence into being, and then there's that created world that he brings into being, and that the very fact of bringing it into being, the very fact of bringing it from non-being into being, marks the created world with the attribute of change and of mutation. So whereas God cannot change or mutate from good to bad and bad to good, from existent to non-existent and from non-existent to existent, the entire created world from the very moment of creation has the potential to mutate from non-existence to existence, which is the first mutation, and then conversely from existence back into non-existence if so desired, or if disengaged from the source of existence, which is God himself. And so this fact means that especially the beings in the created realm, like the angels, or most importantly humans, have the ability to mutate from good to bad. And so we have this unstable environment in the created realm, whereas God is completely stable. The created realm, even the spiritual created realm, the invisible created realm, is unstable. There's a lack of stability in that. And attention.
The angels, it's my understanding, and this is more like a question, it's my understanding that they can no longer fall.
Right. So, my understanding is that the angels have free will.
Right.
They have the capacity to choose good or to choose the light or darkness, but because they don't have the same kind of corporal dimension as we do, as far as like being in time and space and fleshed in that sense, their choice is a kind of a one and done sort of choice. Whereas we move within this realm of diastema, or like a diastemic dimension of like basically the time space matrix. We have more of a fickleness.
Yeah. Where is that? Where'd you find that? Because
that is oh gosh.
It's okay if you don't remember.
Well, I mean, it might be in Gregory of Nyssa's Catechetical Orations. I may have found it there. I mean,
Gregory of Nyssa. I need to read more. I have to admit,
he's good.
I need to admit that I need to read a lot more of the fathers.
Hey,
for sure.
But it's not about reading. I mean, yes, we all need to read more of the fathers.
No, I don't mean that.
We need to encounter the thin places. We need to encounter
absolutely
I'm
not just referring to like in a penitential sense. Like I feel bad that I haven't read. I don't just mean I feel bad.
No, I know.
I mean
you have a desire to.
Right, I have a desire. I really want to.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and not just, oh man, I feel bad. I just feel so bad.
No, there's so much there. They were thin places, you know.
Yep.
The fathers are thin places,
yep.
right? They made themselves into in kind of like thin membranes.
Yeah.
Between the created and the uncreated, the spiritual and the physical.
So, I mean, now that we've confused everyone. No.
Oh, yeah.
Or not confused, but rather lost everyone.
Well, I have breaking news.
Oh.
No, nobody cares.
Oh. I gotta stop wearing these shirts.
That's what your shirt says.
Gotta stop wearing these shirts.
Oh, man. Good times. Good times.
Yeah, so this was one of my interests.
Wow. This is going to be a very long series, Strati. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ancient music, modal music. Oh man.
No.
I don't know. Is it weird to get into like that? Just there's something so attractive to me about just
Well, go ahead. What?
I don't know. I don't even know how to articulate it. It's just I don't know. I wish I can't put it into. It's hard for me to put into words. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't either. I have no idea. I'm just spouting random. No, I mean I just feel like the ancients were onto something as far as
I think that we don't give enough credit to ancient thought, to ancient we think today that we're the masters of the universe.
That we've evolved, yeah.
Yeah, that we've somehow evolved, and that and we put a lot of stock in our technology and our
right.
And not just the technology but the scientific findings, and just because an ancient civilization was wrong about stuff, we kind of to some extent
try to debunk.
I'm sure there's people who try to debunk, but also we just they're old stuff. Like we're so much more beyond that. We're so much beyond that, and that they had lice. We know how to kill lice. They were backward because of their lack of these like sort of almost like comforts. Like they had less comforts than we do, and therefore we just we have soap and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
To varying degrees. They all obviously had to varying degrees an understanding of what killed illness.
Mm-hmm.
They knew vinegar and they knew boiling water, and they knew these basic things.
Right.
And I think that
but there are definite ways in which their medical and scientific understanding have been corrected,
advanced upon
advanced, yeah.
And in such a quick period of time that I think that quick period
kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater.
And its sails are so full.
Right.
That it thinks it's the best. And I think that those of us who are more we're looking at the whole picture.
Yep.
We're looking at the whole picture. I guess I just answered it.
Yep. No, I like that. I like that. I think, yeah, the rapid development and kind of snowball effect of kind of like unbridled progress for the sake of progress. It's almost like we got drunk on just progress.
Or we are drunk on it still.
We are drunk on it.
And so many times, sorry if I interrupt.
No, it's fine.
But so many times I think we sort of, I forgot. Darn it.
That's okay. Sometimes that's a meaningful experience.
It was important.
Well, it'll come back. We'll just talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
What do you think about people spiritually evolving? See?
I think that's where I was kind of going with it.
Yeah.
We've advanced we think we've advanced.
Right.
So far.
Right.
That we've discounted the spiritual advancement.
Yep.
And instead of spiritual advancement, we have technological, medical advancement. And the modern age has sort of thrown out the spiritual. In fact, there was a little blip, if you may call it that, in the 60s where people were trying to find spirituality in the Western world.
No, I think,
well,
right. I think that was more than a blip. I mean, more than a blip, meaning like, I think there was something to that.
Well, let me just...
And I'm not saying it was good.
I'm just saying...
Let
me kind of just finish it and then...
Sorry, yeah,
You may be right that it wasn't just a blip, or rather, right. It wasn't random. I'm sure people were truly inside them are seeking...
right.
But what I'm kind of noticing lately, and I'm just kind of... Just thoughts. But I could be wrong in a way. But I almost feel like nowadays... because I see this in a lot of people who are looking into Orthodoxy. And it's just a thing that I've noticed, that they're looking for intellectual.
I know.
And so when they start getting interested in it, they start to really look into the intellect and have intellectual arguments with people.
Exactly.
Turning even the mystical, spiritual into intellectual arguments.
Yeah, sure.
And that's very easy to fall into.
Oh yeah.
Very
absolutely.
Easy to fall into. And so I'm wondering now if we just keep going through these phases in this, at least in North America, we keep going through this. We had the thing in the 60s. Now we're in an intellectual. I don't know. It's just a thought that I was having. Like, I think.
No, it's a good thought, and I mean honestly, I think something like what we've just passed through, as far as like the coronavirus, passing through, does something to us. As far as that intellectualizing of things, because I think, it kind of rattles us, existentially speaking, and sort of like either rattles us with the effect of making us like totally lose it, or of like going deeper, than the mind, and I think. I think people are, that there can be an awakening, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
In the midst of a crisis like this.
The problem with the 60s was that they started to get into Eastern religions, drugs, especially drugs. Well, lots of cults were made.
Right, a lot of cults. But there was some sort of like spiritual yearning, stumbling around, testing things, experimenting with things, wanting transcendent experiences. But I think there's a lot of pride there too.
Oh.
And I say this not from a like historically but just like I think that people from that era, like it's easy when you're looking for spiritual experiences, probably of any era, to like allow the ego to corrupt the waters and to then make it can kind of become this delusion. I think that's where Orthodoxy is interesting, insofar as there's a real treatment of the human person in the school of the hard knocks of humility. And humility, I think, kind of burns away a lot of the kind of spiritual imperfections that cause us to get drawn away by other spirits and stuff like that.
Right.
And allows us to kind of like focus on, the
the problem with the religions or the magic or drugs. I mean, drugs is is totally definitely a thing. Is it you're trying to
control,
you're trying to feel good for the sake of feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much about you, but I mean, obviously our salvation is about us,
right?
But
our salvation is about pleasure, not in the fleeting sense of the word, but right. I mean, like St. John Chrysostom talks about pleasure, and it's very striking to hear him talking about it, because like for him, pleasure is actually fundamental. And I think we've talked about this on some level. I think in our episode on desire, we talked a little bit about this, that like from the very get-go, we have this desire for pleasure, right. and a repulsion to pain, right?
Sure, yeah.
But then as life goes on, we realize that that's more nuanced than we think, because some immediate gratification and pleasure brings long-term pain, and some immediate pain brings long-term pleasure, right? And so there's this kind of nuancing that occurs as far as like, I don't think the desire for pleasure is bad. You know what I mean? Like, I think fundamentally it's actually a yearning for God.
Right. Eternal life isn't painful.
It's not going to be painful. Right. Like that kind of like intimate relationship with God is right. the ultimate pleasure, right? It's like pleasure right. beyond pleasure.
Right. In fact, we're doing a video. It's a Chronicle episode 7. Is it 7? 8? Chronicles of the Desert about Joseph the Hesychast.
Oh yeah, nice.
And oh my, when he started being taken up into theoria, into what do you call it?
Kind of a vision of ecstatic vision.
Eros, and whatnot. Yeah. He goes, "What is this? Oh goodness, is this paradise? I want nothing else but this." That was a good feel. These were good feelings. Yeah. But a beyond human good feeling, not
right.
I think I don't even know what it felt like, obviously.
Well, it's beyond good human. Well, it's beyond a fallen, like distorted human, because it's what we were created for, right? So
it's what
in that sense, it's human. In that sense, it's human insofar as it's fulfilling the object of the ultimate object of our desire as far as a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. But it's not the fleeting kind of corruptible, sort of overly fleshly, human pleasure.
I don't know if we've figured out who I am exactly, but we've definitely figured out what I like to talk about. Yeah, well,
we're not going to figure out who you are.
No, I don't think.
Because humans are created in the image of an unknowable God.
It's very good.
So we're never going to pin down who you are.
I think...
But we can know you through your likes and actions and,
I guess for the future, when it comes to all this, I hope to be doing this for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. I hope God will give me many years to do this.
What's this?
TrisagionFilms, these podcasts, and the like, and to do even more. I think one of the things that I'm very interested in doing in the future is more on-site sort of video logs of visiting various holy places or just even chapels and going to the Holy Land and kind of doing vlogs, as they're called, video logs.
Yep.
And not just that, but all out documentaries about things. When I say all out, I mean beyond what we're doing now, like on footage of locations and because as we are now in North America, it's not easy to get to places without spending a large sum of money. Anyway. So those are kind of my future plans. My future plans are all based around this.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to be able to be doing this as my actual job.
Yeah.
And so that's very exciting in and of itself. So
Yep.
I think we can call it.
I think so. It's been a pleasure.
These are fun to record, but hard to edit.
Yes, I believe it.
They can be. I mean, it just takes patience.
Yeah.
Like
all
right.
things. Like most things. Hypomone que epimone.
It's
Patience and persistence.
indeed.
All right. Thank you, Strati.
Thank you, Father.
We'll see you around town.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.